You are?
Steve Gulley.
With?
I have my group, Steve Gulley and New Pinnacle.
And we're here in Edmonton, Alberta at Camp Hoa with the Northern Bluegrass Circle Music Society.
Yeah.
You're doing a workshop. And right off the bat, I want to have a gift for you.
Oh, great. Yeah. That was before my time, too, but that's a promo billboard and I know some of the folks in that picture from my old stomping grounds in Kentucky, central Kentucky, Renfro Valley, the Renfro Valley Barn. That's back. That movie was made in the '60s. The founder of Renfro Valley is John Laird, the man pictured here. He and Red Foley, the Hall of Fame country music singer from Berea, Kentucky, started the Renfro Valley Barn, and later on 7 Arts and United Artists Pictures decided to make a movie about Renfro Valley, including some of my friends. There's Bester Parker. He's a great banjo player, still alive, playing music. His son, you may recall, if you look at the facial expression, is Jeff Parker from Doyle and Benson. And Riverman. That's his dad. My dad played with me there too, so we had the family connection. My good buddy Pete Stamper, who does comedy on my Cumberland Mountain Music Show I have every month in Cumberland Gap, but Pete is still around doing country comedy at Renfro Valley. He's Dolly Parton's original road manager and comedian. He worked with Porter Wagner and with Red Foley on the road, and is a Kentucky Country Music Hall of Famer. A big-time legendary historian for our music. The late, great old Joe Clark. I know a lot of the folks in that picture. I grew up playing around some of them. I'm not from Kentucky, I'm from East Tennessee, but 90 miles up the road, Renfro Valley was there. The second longest continuous radio show in history, only to the Grand Ole Opry. So, and that started in November 4th, 1939, is when Renfro Valley began.
So when did your dad start playing?
My dad started playing there. I actually played with my dad starting there. We went and guested during the 70s when I was first learning to play. And then in 1982, after the World's Fair had left Knoxville, Tennessee, it rotated in different places around the world. Knoxville had the World's Fair in 1982. I was about 18, 19 years old. And when we got finished that summer, we got a call from the folks at Renfro Valley, where we guested several times, asking us to come and bring our country band, country music, to be the staff band at Renfro Valley. So in 1982, I started officially at Renfro Valley. My dad did as well. And then we played up through 1987, when there was a management change, and we decided to stay in Tennessee and play more around there, and went back to playing some bluegrass and country music. And then in 1989, new owners took it over and put millions of dollars to renovate the property and bring it up to snuff and really expand the place there. And we went back along with my good friend Dale Bradley. We'd cut a record on our first album on her by then and recorded it. And it got her a job there. And they asked, who's singing harmony and playing on that? And they said, well, it's Don and Steve Gulley. And they said, we got to call them because they're going to be here. And I went back, and early in 1990 was offered the musical director's job at Renfro Valley, which I was band leader. I charted everything, I arranged everything, and handled about 40 entertainers, me and one more guy. So I ran the studio there, produced records on Dale and people like David Marshall, the Marshall family, the Parker Brothers band, which is Jeff Parker and his family. A lot of different people, an album on myself, different people, entertainers, but I ran the studio there. It was a great learning process, and I stayed there until 1994 when a guy named Doyle Lawson called me and asked me to be a part of Quicksilver. I left on the road, but I stayed at Renfro Valley for 16 years.
And you met a very special lady there as well, I believe.
My wife is a fantastic singer. Debbie is my wife, but we were singing buddies long before it ever got any more serious than that. We both went through first marriages that weren't so good, and when we came out the other end, we kind of found each other again. But we knew each other 10 years before we ever married, so it just is friends. But it all began. It's a special place to me because there's a lot of milestones that happened for me. Doyle Lawson first heard me sing there. Different things happened great for me there, but Renfro Valley is a special place to people like me and Dale Ann and Debbie and my dad. So,
well, especially the connection with Dale and Bradley that has remained for so many years. Now, going back a little farther as well, we were mentioning your dad, and your dad, was he at WRBK?
No, we were in Tennessee. He was at WNTT in Tazewell, Tennessee, which is just above Knoxville. He's in the Knoxville, Tennessee radio market.
Okay. Because I think old Joe Clark was at WR.
He was, and actually Pete Stamper is still on WRB to this day.
Okay. I know it's still running.
Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of your dad, not only was he at Renfrew Valley, but I believe you might be able to find him on the back of that.
Yeah, he I know this recording, it's been a long time back, but Dad was, he played a lot of folk festivals and a lot of things at Cosby. I remember going there when I was a kid with him. So I may have been present when this was done.
Oh, really?
But just as a kid, going to listen. So, but my dad played. He let me know later on that he and the Pinnacle Mountain Boys were at the first ever Bluegrass Festival in Fincastle, Virginia.
Was he?
Carlton Haney's Festival.
He was at Haney's.
Yeah. And so they didn't get to perform. Bass player had a kidney stone. They had to get him back to Knoxville. True story. Larry McNeely was in the band from the Glenn Campbell Show. Larry's a pioneering banjo player, played in my dad's band. And, they were all there to play, and part of them got to stay and play, and part of them had to go back home. But long story short, they were at the first ever Bluegrass Festival. And my dad was at a lot of monumental things. I mean, he played the Ryman Auditorium and played the Grand Ole Opry before I was born. So.
Well, he was a guitar picker when there wasn't that many guitar pickers, and he was a phenomenal guitar picker.
My dad still is. It's amazing. He's 77 and he still sings and plays like he did, Darcy.
And he plays that Larry Sparks, that hard.
He played before. He was very reminiscent of Doc Watson and a lot of those guys that played melody. You could hear what they were playing and know what they were playing. Old fiddle tunes, and he was not only a mentor to me, but to a lot of people that I've met all over the country, all over the world, really knew about my dad's music. So the lineage and the guy that set me up to play was really important. And he still, to this day, doesn't realize or care about accolades or anything. If you bragged on him now, he'd blush and say, let's go get something to eat. He's just that kind of guy.
Well, and what's very interesting to me is since we're talking about lineage, we'll jump around, I guess, a little bit, is that lineage is continued with your son as well. My
son Brad is a great singer. He's playing dad and working a day job and singing when he can right now, but he's not because he's my son, but he kind of got it by osmosis like I did. I was crawling around on the floor when people were playing music, and I just soaked it up. I soaked it up, and Brad did too. And he's a very talented songwriter, singer. He's a very talented guy, and I hope that he'll be making more waves musically, but right now he's doing the right thing. He's got a new baby, and he's off the road doing other things besides music, but still with music, as a focal point for him.
Is he still with Cumberland Gap?
Cumberland River, the group that they are regrouping, and Brad's not a part of that. Jamie Dean, who founded the band, the banjo player, he was a primary guy in the band, and he left and took a job in Florida. So he had to do that for his family. He's a Harlan County coal mining guy in eastern Kentucky, and when the coal starts playing out, it's time to do something else. So he went, took a job in Florida. Long story short, he kind of scrambled the band. But my son Brad was one of the guys who got off the road and kind of made a decision, a conscious decision to work on his family a little while until he got it on his feet, and then go do it the right way, and go play music where he's not gone for every birthday and all that kind of stuff, because he saw me have to do some of that. But he's picking his points and choosing his times, and Brad was included on the God Didn't Choose Sides album that I produced for Rural Rhythm. Did all that at my studio in Cumberland Gap. All-star cast of people. 2 years of my life to make that record, but I was a history major in college, and that's a very interesting time for me, and I helped put all that together and produced it all. And the label wanted Brad to sing the song Rebel Heart for the album, and he did. And so we got to sing that one together. But he's still vital musically. He's just taking a little downtime right now, so you'll probably hear some more from him maybe next year.
Well, that album had Marty Raven, Ronnie Bowman,
Dave
Stafford,
Bradley Walker, Dale Ann Bradley.
Dale Ann Bradley, of course.
And I was on there and messed everything up. But then we had what essentially we named the Gap Creek Quartet. Gap Creek's a little stream that flows out by my house that comes out of Cumberland Gap, Tennessee. And that was me, my dad Don, Dale Ann Bradley, and my good friend Vic Graves, who people have seen on some of my solo albums. A great, great mountain singer and my fishing buddy. So he's a great dobro player and singer. We got him included on the record as well. So a lot of great people on that album. Carrie Haster, I had to mention her too. Carrie's a great singer, and she was on that record as well. Has had some success chart-wise in the States with her bluegrass records. But it's afforded us a lot of good things. critically acclaimed and got us in the doors of some of these places that were more historically minded than just musically. It's been a real diverse record. We plan on making volume 2 as soon as the touring schedule dies down this year. So we're working on that.
Now, going back a little bit, I'm going to be jumping around. So the Pinnacle Mountain Boys, of course, Larry McNeely was the banjo player, but before that was Lauren Gunther.
Lauren Rogers.
Lauren Rogers.
Lauren Rogers is probably the best unknown banjo player anybody's heard of, because I remember when, I'll put it this way, when I first met Doyle Lawson, we had no idea. Doyle's about 5 years younger than my father. And he's from one county over from where I was raised. So again, Dad had no idea who was watching his music at that time, but Doyle was a high school student in Sneeville, Tennessee, where Jimmy Martin's from, in Hancock County. And when I first met Doyle, Dad met Doyle, he said, "Don, it's a pleasure to meet you," met my dad. And he said, "I have to tell you," he said, "you set a fire under me when I was a kid. The Pinnacle Mountain Boys came to my high school." He said, "I was never the same after that." And he started naming names, and the first one he said, "Lauren Rogers played banjo." He said, "As good as I ever saw in my life." And he was. He died really young, in his 30s, early 30s. He had a farming accident. He was on a tractor and hit late at night, in the evening, you couldn't see, and he hit a rock, and it flipped the tractor. When it did, it crushed him, killed him.
And not only was he a heck of a banjo player, but he was also a songwriter as well.
And a great Merle Travis guitar player, and I still record his music as often as I can. My dad says he was the greatest musician he ever got to play with, and Dad played with some great ones. Charlie Collins from Roy Acuff's band was in my dad's band, played fiddle. All these, Jerry Moore, who was later with the Pinnacle Boys when they had the twin fiddles, and Jerry was absolutely one of the best musicians I was ever around. He said the one guy that made him want to play more than anybody in the world was Lauren Rogers. He died tragically early, way young, early 30s. He'd already made a path. They were on the Grand Ole Opry singing Cheater of the Year, a song I recorded later on, but Lauren wrote that song. And they did that in 1961. Farron Young introduced them, and they were on the pet milk portion of the Grand Ole Opry. And so we still have pictures and recordings of that. So I grew up knowing what it was to have somebody in the family with a bunch of guys who really knew what they were doing. And Lauren was a big, big influence on me, although I was about 1 year old when he died. That all just kind of, when I started listening to these old reel-to-reels and live, I have vaults of live recordings of that band at home. And we plan on digitizing them in my studio and bringing them back. We've already done it with some of them. But the music that was made by that group of people was more than inspiring for me. It made me want to play to the nth degree. And Lauren and people like that made me want to write songs too. So it's a big plus for me to be around that.
And again, talking about legacy, of course, Buster Turner was in your dad's band.
He was my dad's partner in that band, and Buster wrote a ton of great songs. He wrote Beautiful Altar of Prayer, which I kind of made popular with Doyle Lawson on the Grammy-nominated album we had, There's a Light Guiding Me. But he wrote Little So-and-So from my solo record. He wrote Let Me Live My Life Again, which we recorded with Doyle on the first album I was there with, and Never Walk Away album in '95. But Buster, he had created something that was strong, and the one thing that he and my dad had, they had brother harmony without being brothers. It was an intangible that you just couldn't, it just happened when they got together and sang. They would go out as a duet and then go out as a band too. They did Lubin-esque type harmonies and things like that, did great music. I had 4 sides at the house at the studio that they recorded in the Quonset hut, where all the great Colombian epic recordings were made in Nashville, with a full country band in 1968 with Pete Robbins playing piano. All these great musicians behind them, and they had a lot of opportunities and should have been Opry members before people that made it. I probably should have, but when Lauren died, it kind of hurt that a little bit. They weren't as inspired to play as much, and they lasted several more years, but it was never the same for my dad after that, and I think Buster felt that too. But Buster, here's a little lineage for you too.
I know exactly.
Brian Turner is my partner. Brian Turner is my partner in crime down at the Curve Recording Studio. We own that together. And that's Buster Turner's nephew. So the lineage of the Gulley and Turner families led me to name my band New Pinnacle, because it's a given that we want to kind of carry on that legacy.
Well, he's a multi-instrumentalist as well. I know he plays bass.
He plays bass. Well, he played, when he was in college, he played in alternative bands. He's a great electric guitar player. He plays everything. But we play Bluegrass by choice because it's a big part of who we are. So he's one of those guys that make you sick. He can do about everything. But that Turner and Gulley kind of harmony is not lost on us. It was easy for he and I to sing together from day one, so it's a great fit.
Now, I know you're a bluegrass guy, of course, but I know there's definitely an influence of country.
That's the man right there. That's my guy. I'll take him over Pavarotti or Sinatra any day.
Well,
he's my dude.
Now, this is a test, I guess. Are you a James Taylor fan?
I'm the most huge, and I'm trying to figure out which album. I know which album that is. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have it.
Oh,
but I know exactly what album it is. Yeah, I know exactly what album it is. Yeah. I do have it. Yeah, those are my two biggest influences outside of my father.
Yeah.
The biggest. This is the early album right here, the '67. I know this record. And when the flat top was going on, the eyes were bugged out. James will tell you that was the cat, you know? And he still was till the day he died for me. We opened a lot of shows for him with Mountain Heart in the last years of his life. And I got to know he and Nancy, well, I say the last years, up till about 2006 when I left Mountain Heart. We were opening shows on a grand scale in coliseums and auditoriums playing bluegrass for crowds before George came on. And I got to meet him, and I actually got to tell one of my heroes how much he meant to me. And it was important to me to get to do that. I got to Ron Gaddis played bass with George, and he knew my wife's family. He babysat my wife when she was a little kid, and he looked at me and said, "There's my singer. Where are you going? We're going to sing some country music tonight." I said, "I'm not singing in front of Jones, man." And he said, "Let's go back here and meet." And George came up to me and said, "I hear you need to sing me one of these country songs. I've been hearing this other stuff, but I want to hear." I said, "Buddy," I said, "I may be ignorant, but I'm not stupid." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm going to tell you something." I had tears in my eyes. He did too before we got through. But I looked at him and I said, "You know," I said, "my opinion don't mean much. I'm a little podunk bluegrass singer." I said, "You have no reason to, I'm not important." He said, "Yes, you are." And I said, "Well, for whatever importance there is, I got to tell you." I said, "Me and many, many other people were taught by you without you knowing it." And I said, "You're the best ever drew breath." And I said, "You mean the world to me." And that's the reason I sing. And he hugged me and cried, you know. So when you get to do some of those special things like that, it means the world. But JT's my favorite musician because he can do it all. He can play, he can write, he can sing, and he can sit with a guitar and kill you. And to me, James Taylor's the most complete musician I've ever heard in my life. In any kind of music, I put him against anybody. And he's always had something to say. Not just singing songs because. He wrote something that meant something to people. So those two guys were a heavy dose of what I grew up doing. I'm surprised that you got all this, but that's me.
Well, what's fascinating to me is, I mean, that is a very strong musical background in regards to like what you're talking about, the complete musician in regards to being able to play guitar, to be able to sing and be able to write. What I find really interesting about you especially is that partnership that you have, that I feel that you have with Tim Stafford in regards to a lot of those songs. That I was talking with Tom Adams.
Yeah.
That it's interesting. There's musicians that have a relationship. I think his is with Marshall Wilburn.
Absolutely. Marshall's one of my best buddies.
Yeah. And I feel that there's a kinship.
But they do. They kind of complete one another in a lot of ways.
They follow one another around, and they're always there.
They're not far from the other guy.
Yeah, and
Tim and I are that way too.
Yeah.
He called me just the other day and he said, "I'm going over to write with Kim Williams, another great writer who's written so many country hits you can't name them. He wants you to come over and write with us." He said, "Are you free? Because we get together so often and write." And I said, "I've got my grandbaby today and I'm not going to blow this." I said, "We planned it for about a month so I can be with my grandson." I said, "I appreciate the offer." And Tim gets that. He said, "Priorities, buddy. Don't worry about it." Tim and I are friends, and it's not just musical. We've shared a lot of heartache and a lot of personal stuff with each other and been there when we needed each other and will be again. I tend to think that I gravitate toward people that have a heart for and a spirit for the same things that I do. I think everybody's that way, but Tim, from the time we met, it was just like we clicked musically. And then later on, we clicked personally. Songwriting helped abet that and help it, you know. But I think you can get in a room with another great musician and it don't always gel, you know. you respect each other, but you don't really click. Stafford and I like the same things musically, and he's so well educated, and I like to think that I'm a deep thinker too. And when we get together, it's just like, you know, we can make something really mundane hopefully seem a little more interesting, you know, on the surface. But we get together and we just look at each other. So I got all these notes here, and I got some ideas. What you got? And the first thing we say is, what you got today? But that's way at about 30 minutes after we roll in the door and say, you okay? How's everybody at home?
Right.
You all right? You need anything? Okay. You want something to drink? All right. What are we going to do? And then we sit down, and it all begins with a common idea, and it ends up being something. I mean, we've written as many as 4 songs in a day in a short afternoon. It doesn't happen all the time, but we've had days we wrote 2 or 3, and most of them have been recorded. And we've written somewhere around 120 songs together.
120 songs you guys have written together?
Yeah.
No.
And it wasn't just us cutting them. We've had songs cut by a lot of people you wouldn't imagine. So we've been real fortunate. We want to get songs from the Dogwood Winter album to James, and we probably can. We want JT to hear them. But Andrea Zahn's in his band, and she's a good friend. So we plan on him hearing songs like Torches and Nebraska Sky and some of the more Jimmy Webb influenced modern songs that we wrote on that record. It's our dream to get to not only meet James, but get some of our music in his hand and let him. He won't critique it because he's too good a guy, but I think we hope he liked part of what we do because he's a big influence toward our writing styles, I think. And so when we got together, it was just a given, I think, that it would work. The first song we wrote was, I think, Rider on an Endless Line, which was the title song to Tim's solo record years ago. And then the next time we got together, I think we wrote 4 songs, 2 of which were Pacific Time and Always Never Enough, Kenny and Amanda Smith. Okay. We wrote those 2 songs in the same day. So I don't know why, because we're no better than anybody else. We just kind of work good together. Yeah. I'm a dude that's I'm animated when I write because I start getting ideas and I pace. I'm like a caged animal. I walk around in my living room and he starts grinning. He says, "You got something?" I said, "I think. Is this stupid?" And we love each other enough to say, "Yeah, it's pretty dumb, but I think it works," you know. Right. So I just love my relationship with Tim as a friend and a musical ally. He's the best. He's great.
Not this guy as well.
Yeah. If you didn't like him, you didn't like music.
Yeah.
Keith Whitley was a huge influence.
And another guy that equally crossed over back.
Well, he just didn't see any difference. He was like, I should say I'm a lot like him because he came first, but I never looked at it as being country versus bluegrass, or, you know, bluegrass was never country music's redheaded stepchild to me. You know, it was blues influenced. I mean, if it hadn't been for Monroe learning from a blues guitar player, we wouldn't have played like we do. So I didn't really put labels on things, and thank God my dad did. When I was at the house, he was a broadcaster for 4 years, and he would always bring these promotional records home that he had extra singles of. He said, "Here, buddy, listen to this and see if you like this." And I mean, I'm 4 or 5 years old, but I knew how to work a record player. and I wanted, even at 4 years old, I can remember back that far, and I had a picture of the Buckaroos signed to my dad. Buck had signed it and sent it to the radio station. I still have it. It's in my collection at home. And I had it on my door.
Again, another guy.
I wanted it on my door because I wanted to be Don Rich. I didn't want to be Buck. I wanted to be Don Rich. I wanted to play Taylor and sing out high tenor. I loved it. So if you think about all that correlation between that, Whitley loved Lefty Frizzell, but he loved Lester Flatt. Yeah. And he loved Carter Stanton. And he loved Ralph. And he loved J.D. Crowe. And he loved all the music that he got to make in a short amount of time. Keith was 33. And the thing about that, I remember the first time I heard Keith Whitley. I'll share this with you. I was with my dad. We played on an alternate day at Redgate, a big bluegrass festival near Knoxville, Tennessee, huge. And a 4-day festival that was just full of everybody that was anybody. We played a day before, and Crow was coming the next day. I said, "Dad, let's finagle another wristband. I got to come tomorrow. I want to hear Crow." And I'd heard Keith, but I'd never seen him. And we walked down the hill, and I can take you to the spot because that farm's still there. I can take you where I stopped. Everybody has an Elvis moment. Elvis wasn't my guy, you know. But I walked down, heard Whitley, you know, and he sang, "I'll be your stepping stone." And that, you know, George cut that first, and Keith did it with the end. I walked down the hill and made about 3 steps, and Dad's walking to me. And I know he's grinning, you know. I walked down, and "I'll be your stepping stone." I heard that, and I stopped my phone, and I really didn't know what to say. I had stuff in my hand. I remember dropping it and looking at my dad going, and I was waiting for him to say something. Dad's really quiet. He says about 5 words a year if he needs to. He looked at me and said, son, there's a lot of fellas here this weekend think they can sing. I said, he can. Listen to him. He's right. And from that day, I just said, man, anything that he's on, I got to hear. And when he went to Nashville, I think he made his best music with J.D. Crowe. And I'll always say that.
Yeah.
Because that was before Nashville lowered his keys and did all this. Keith he took a lot more chance. Don't get me wrong, great records, because how can you mess him up?
He's still the voice. I mean, so does
but I was fortunate enough to get to sing with him posthumously on the Sad Songs and Waltzes album that Rounder did. That JD calls me one day and I fell on the floor and he said, I want you. JD had a rough voice. Said, I want you to come to Nashville. I said, okay. He said, I don't want these dudes in Nashville getting a hold of this. This ain't a Nashville record. We made it. And he said, you and Dale Ann, if you come down, I want you to sing harmony on about 4 songs. He said, I'm going to take me off of it, put you on. And I was like, well, this is my hero. Crowe's my hero. And I'm sitting there going, and I get to sing with another one. And but it was a great experience because I got to sing songs that I learned from him. I mean, I Never Go Around Mirrors, and Somewhere Between, which is the old Haggard song and all that. That's some of his best singing, and I got to sing harmony on that later on. And meant the world to me. And he's still a huge influence because he transcended barriers. If you'll notice, everybody that I listen to transcends barriers, even as country as Jones is. George Jones transcends barriers. Yeah. They asked Frank Sinatra one time what he thought about George Jones. He said, being Sinatra, he said, I think he's probably the second best singer I've ever heard. And then he looked at him and I said, what do you think about, how would you describe his singing style? He said, well, greatest answer ever. It's documented. He said, if a deer comes to a fence, you don't have to tell a deer to jump it. He just does it. And by that he meant, of course, Jones is an instinctive singer. He won't sing something the same way twice. He don't sing by form. He sings by feeling. Right. And there's no replacing that, and you can't teach that. So every one of those guys, whether it be James Taylor, George Jones, Keith Whitley, or my dad and Buster Turner, and Lauren Rogers in his playing, they never sat down with a schematic and said, I have to do it this way. They said, why not? Why can't we do it this way? And who cares what they call it? It's good. Dad said we had 2 kinds of music, good and bad. That was it. So when I got older and I started listening to Michael McDonald and the Doobies, and I played electric bass then, so I had to learn all this stuff. And Dad just looked up, and I know it wasn't his favorite stuff, but he looks at, learn all you can, buddy. Steal every bit you like, use it. And that's what we did. And it for good or bad, it depending on how you look at it, that's what made me do what I do. The way I do it are those guys, because I had a heavy dose of every bit of that in my living room, so it was great. I remember those days. I remember that guy in that tie and jacket there.
So that was a big change in regards to being Doyle Lawson in a band and being the head of the band.
I stayed off the road for 2 years, 2.5, almost 3 years, 3 seasons at Renfro Valley. I went back off the road because my children were small. But there was also a musical decision involved. I love Doyle to this day. He's a mentor and one of my dearest friends in the world. If he sees me in the middle of 5,000 people, he don't stick his hand out, he'll say, just a minute, I'll be right back. Stevie does this. That's our relationship. And it was the hardest thing I ever did to leave Quicksilver. We were in the middle of going to New York for the Grammys. But something after prayer and soul searching and everything else, I felt like it was time for me to move on. Doyle and I both cried, and we both hugged necks, and Barry never got over it, Abernathy. And for 2 years he called me every day. But musically, I knew I was writing songs that we wouldn't do. And at that time, Doyle had a policy where you couldn't make solo records because it was more important for him to keep the band together. I don't blame him at all.
No,
But for me, I didn't come into Doyle's band like a little kid. I came in at 31. And I had something to say by then. And I felt like I did, and Mountain Heart helped me prove that. For 2 years after, like I say, 2.5 years, I answered Barry's phone calls and said, I'm making this country record with Carl Jackson and John Huey and all these great country musicians. And I said, I'm not going to leave that because I've invested money in it. And I want to see my kids grow up a little longer. And he, every other week, he would call me and say, I believe there's more music for us to make. Please, let's do this. And in 98, I left in early 96 from Doyle's band. And in late 98, I said, okay, we'll try it. He said, we got to have one more name. Will you call Steffi? He's your buddy. Yeah. I called Adam Steffi. He said, man, I'm ready. Let's go. And we started Mountain Heart. And a little ways into it, Adam was having problems at home. and he wanted to try to salvage that. And he got off the road for a little while. So there we were holding the bag, and we invested everything we had in this, and he felt so bad, and it was terrible. We're in the middle of cutting our first record. We cut 4 or 5 tracks already. Got to find somebody. So we went through a couple of guys, and we landed on Alan Purdue, and he fit the band perfectly and helped define the early sound of Mountain Home.
Right.
And I was there 8.5 years creating new music, and although it was different than Doyle Lawson, it wasn't far removed in its originality. We just kind of took that and stretched it a little bit. Some of the things that I did wouldn't have probably been acceptable in Doyle's band, and some of the things that the guys came up with musically probably wouldn't have been thought of. That's not, I always say music's not really good or bad in the end, it's really either or, because everybody's got their own opinions.
Right.
And it's kind of like politics and religion, you know, you're never going to agree on music, politics, or religion with everybody. If you did that, I'll go to the same church and buy the same CDs. So with Doyle, it was just an extension of, we took what we learned there, and from my dad and other influences that we all had. He kind of brought it together and it worked. You know, I'm real proud of the 5 albums that I recorded there and the 8.5 years I spent there with those guys.
Forces of Nature is just, I mean, all of the albums, don't get me wrong, but there's something, Forces of Nature is a pretty special album.
I was excited about that. I thought we made music that mattered. And I've had some of the newer bands come up in the last just few years and tell me, you know, we play music because you guys.
Yeah.
And I hope that feels like it felt to Crow and Bobby Osborne and Doyle Lawson and Paul Williams and all these guys when I looked and said, you know, you're the reason I sing like I do, you know. Another big influence we left out of the list, probably one of my biggest in the world, is Ricky Skaggs. I never wanted to sing and play bluegrass music the way I wanted to when I heard 0044. And I heard Skaggs sing tenor above rice like a lead singer, with that much emotion. But we worked with Ricky for 5 years and 3 albums. And I got to work in the studio with my mentor in a lot of ways. You know, Skaggs tried to hire me 2 different times. I was playing country and bluegrass. And timing wasn't right, but he remains a great friend. He's been in my home and knows my family. And anytime I see him, he'll say, I love you, buddy. How's Debbie? She's my wife. So we have that relationship. And I have that relationship with all those guys you've mentioned just about. And, but Skaggs was a big influence. I don't want to leave him out because it meant a ton to me to be able to do that with him and with his blessing to carry on kind of what he did. But Mountain Heart was a big, it was a big stepping stone for me. I expected to stay there forever. The music started moving a little further away from what I really did. It was a musical decision to leave, and when I did, I was out of work about one day. I called my buddy Phil Ledbetter and I said, you know, we've always wanted to do this. Why not? Would you want to do it now? He said, I'm in. And he, like Barry, said, we really need another name, man, so they know who we were. What do you think about Alan Bobby? I said, man, I love him. And by the end of the week, we had a nucleus of the band started. We started Grasstown. I stayed there for 5 years. After Phil left, it kind of lost a little bit for me because Phil took ill and is still battling cancer. We still get together. We did a TV thing at near home a couple of weeks ago. It was spot on the 4 o'clock afternoon news show to publicize a date where both of our bands were playing. He plays with Dale Anstill. Everywhere I go, I'm wearing a Team Filibuster bracelet right here.
Right.
And he's doing great. For people that are asking, he's really fighting hard and doing well. But that was the next phase, and with that came a different sound again, but it still was true to what I wrote. I wrote a lot of the songs that we did in there, and I think my growth as a songwriter helped kind of form that sound, because Bobby's going to have a say-so in it because he's so creative with his man playing his scene, and then Phil is one of the only 3 people who named over Player of the Year. He's a landmark type musician. We've known each other since we were 12, so it was a good move to go into that phase. But Mountain Heart set me up to be able to do that, and it also got us popular enough to where people knew kind of what we all did. Phil with Wildfire and J.D. Crow, me with Doyle Lawson and Mountain Heart, and Alan with Blue Ridge, and New Quicksilver, all the bands that he had. So a lot of folks knew us, and we had a leg up on new bands to do that, and enjoyed the time there, and stayed there until 2011. So.
And then, of course, from Grasstown, you started.
There was a young lady in between that who came to me every day.
Yes.
She came to me every day after she moved back home, but she lived on the other side of the mountain from me in Kentucky, and that name comes up again, Dale and Brad. She's my musical sister, and
And did you start 1985 was the first
We
time?
sang together. We sang together 30 years.
Okay.
The first album, I knew her before the first album. We got the first album in '87 or '88 for her. With my dad's country band. It was country music. And she can sing anything. So
Yeah, she can sing.
But that friendship lasted. And when she went back to Renfro, we went to, and we just became kind of, she and I and Phil and I are kind of synonymous with one another. They always relate us together. You know, we've done so many things together. But staying on the road with Delane said, honey, I moved back close. That's Delane's word, honey. I moved back close. We really need to do more things together. And so Alan and I weren't working as hard, as much with Grasstown, so I decided it was time to go out and us finally do a few things together. In fact, we're still doing some things together. We're going at the end of October to Europe in 4 countries over there as a duet, so we still get on 2 chairs and sit and sing and play. And it's a lot of fun. We'll always do that. She was in my studio last week recording harmonies with me for a project for somebody else, and we work constantly. She's calling, yeah, hey, it's like your sister or brother, you know.
Right.
And then at the end of that run, I started feeling like it was time for me to, if I'm ever going to have my own band, truly my own band, it was probably time. And I felt like I still had something to say musically. And so I called a bunch of guys and said, if I do this, would you be interested? And I handpicked the guys that make up New Pinnacle. And I started Steve Gulley and New Pinnacle. And the first year for this band has been way beyond my expectations. We've had the first single went #1 for 6 weeks in a row nationally in the U.S. And second single went as high as #2, so we've had 2 top 5 records. And the album is, I think, currently number 9, 8 or 9 in the country. Right. And that's out of the gate. So, and it's just 4 guys from the mountains got together at my studio and said, yeah, it's pretty cool, let's play that. And I co-wrote half the record and did some old country influence stuff. I did Don't You Ever Get Tired of Hurting Me. So a long, long way to the top of the world, stuff like that I sang with my dad there, again, paying homage to that,
right.
that part. But I really am happy. I'm probably the happiest I've ever been right now playing music, and I'm 53.
Awesome.
So that's a lot to be said for doing it that long. And,
well, it's not like you had a terrible experiences with any of the bands. That's
left on
saying
good
something
terms.
even more significantly that
I'm glad you brought that up.
You're the happiest right now with all the bands, and you had a great.
And I left on good terms with all those people.
Yeah,
you know, they're all still my friends. I talked to Abernathy 2 days before I left. I talked to Phil the day before I left. I mean, and Alan's here at the camp with me, and we're neighbors through the wall, and we sit over there and reminisce and talk, and got songs started we want to write and all this stuff. It's always that way. But I never did look at, and I still don't look at music like a popularity contest. I never really played music to be seen, and not necessarily all the time to be heard. I did it because of the extension of me, and I wanted to see how much I could get out. It's therapy in a lot of ways for me, and it's just something that I cannot, I've learned that I can't live without it, and live the way I want to live, mentally, physically, or emotionally, because music equals emotion to me. It always has. If I can't feel it, I don't listen to it. If I can't listen to it, I can't play or sing it, and I won't write it either. And the correlation between all the different stops along the way, and I've had very few jobs. We've mentioned all the jobs I've had since age 5. You know, five music, 5 or 6 jobs. And I've worked in factories and done everything in the early years to support my musical habit. I've done all that stuff. Put myself, went back to college and all that stuff too, and still played. And never laid it down. And I can't see me doing that anytime soon, you know, especially with this group of guys. They charge me up. It's come full circle. I was Dad's kid and always the runt and the little guy in the band. Now I'm the old guy and all these younger guys are playing with me. And I like that better because they kind of listen to what I want to do. And we always find room for their personalities. They help shape this new band, and it doesn't sound like anything I've done before. I'm very, very proud of that. I've had people come up to me and say, how did you do this? You know, you've reinvented what your sound is again. I said, no, this is probably what I always had in mind. It's just taking this long to get it out. And, you know, like I say, I'm proud of the work that I've been able to put together all these many years. Proud of the people I played with, and proud of the family that cared enough about me to let me do it. You know, I've got a wife that would take 4 jobs if it took it for me to be her. She loves me that much, and she's a great singer. And she puts her. We're cutting a record on Debbie, by the way. People have asked me. I'm producing an acoustic country record on Debbie in the fall. It'll be on Roll Rhythm. It'll be a national release next year.
And that's out of your studio, the Curve.
That'll be right there at the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I've got a 1,200 square foot building on my property. It's got 5 acres back in the mountains, and you drive till the road runs out, and you come up, and that's where Steve lives. You know, I'm in the mountains by choice. And it's a great place conducive to creativity and great music. So we're still doing it, and hopefully we'll be doing it until the old man upstairs says it's time to come. Let's go. You know, because as long as I can do it at the level I want to do it, I'll do it. And when I can't, I'll be the first one to tell you, and I'll back away from the road and performing. I'll sing in my home church or with my dad or whoever's around, you know, at that time, and I'll go back out in the studio and produce records on other people. I'll always be affected by music and be involved in it, I think. But right now, again, it's the most fun I've had, and I just love the new band. I can't wait for everybody to hear. So we're a showcase band earlier this month at IBMA, Raleigh, and turned a lot of heads, thank goodness. I'll say that, not bragging, I was just really surprised that people cared that much. But we came in and we played, and the boys, you know, it's always just full throttle. They don't, yeah man, let's play. And it charges me up, you know. So it's really fun when you got 4 dudes on the same page and you look around and you know everybody on stage cares about you as people. My son-in-law's my mandolin player. Brian's my partner in the studio. And Matt Kruby plays banjo. He's been my longtime friend and one of my favorite musicians. He can play everything. So we've all known each other, and they all signed in on and bought into the idea that whatever we get, we're going to go play because we won't be in front of people picking. And it's fired the old man up. I'm ready to go pick. So we're having fun doing it. And all these years are not in vain because we're still being creative. The biggest charge I get still is starting with a blank piece of paper and ending up with something recorded by somebody playing it that's going to be played in a car or a jam session. Somebody said, man, that's cool. And that's still why I play. It's not rocket science, but it is a lot of fun. It's great.
Well, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And yeah, good luck with your band. We're really looking forward to continuing to hear lots of great records out of you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.